Hello, we have a Maxwell Diablo 4 Season 7 podcast, and we have, including me, 4 members of the team here. We have been hard at work updating the guides. Some of them are actually not ready yet, Vince, because, as always, it's always very last minute, and everyone is scrambling to get it done. But we are getting there. We are updating, 60 endgame guides and all the other stuff, of course. And we have Ava, Beatdropper, and Macro here from the D4 team on Max Roll. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves in that order and say a few words about yourself, and then we can get started with the podcast.
All right, well, I'm Ava. I'm apparently someone that writes a lot of resource posts and apparently the guy from now on. I've basically done the in-depth resource posts for Maxroll for a while now. So you might have seen my attack speed breakpoints or in-depth damage guide, but that's basically what I'm responsible for.
Thank you, Pete.
All right, I guess it's my turn. Yeah. Hi, boys and girls, I guess as well. Name's Beatdropper. I've been playing Barb since a fairly long time, I guess. I'm probably like the second guy that joined the Ava's team regarding mechanics, game mechanics, and testing things. I've been in charge of a couple of Barb builds since last season, including like Thorns, helping with Mighty Throw and Earthquakes for this season, so anything really. If you have questions about it, just ask.
Thank you. And Macro?
Welcome everybody to this season of the Necromancers. My name is Macro Bioboy. I've been prophesizing this since the release of the game. Finally, we're on top. It's going to feel great. I obviously don't know anything about Diablo 4, as I clearly am only a PoE Chad at this point. But no, I'm really excited about Season 7. And I completely forgot that this was my background. I do have a Diablo 1 as well, but now I can't remember how to change it. So we're PoE till we die, apparently.
Yes. Yeah, and every game that you're not currently playing is dead, of course. Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just a graveyard of AAA games that have never seen the light of day.
Okay, thank you for the introductions. Yeah, and myself, I'm Woody. I'm the team lead on Max Roll for the Diablo franchise. So I'm basically trying to make sure that we get everything done in time here, and I'll be the host for this evening. So the plan for this podcast is we're gonna try to stick to something like 90, maybe a little bit more minutes, and go through a few topics regarding Season 7. So I have prepared a little list here. So we just did the intros. I want to talk about the Witchpowers, which is like the season theme. So there's a lot to discuss there, I guess, with the favorite ones, the most powerful ones, and why they're good. I guess even outside of our guides, it might be interesting for people to learn about our thoughts and, maybe try to cook up their own stuff with them. Then I want to talk about the class balance, tier lists, new builds. There's a few things here. So we have a represent from, Rogue, I guess, to some degree, with Ava, and Barb, Necro, and myself, also like Spurborn, Rogue. We don't have a sword guy here, I guess, and a druid, so it's a bit unfortunate, but we can't fit too many people into a podcast. But we can discuss those a little bit as well. There's some stuff there from, I guess, what we know from the meetings. Yeah, then we want to talk about progression. So just like what changed with itemization, this leveling and so on, endgame meta. Aspirational season theme objectives. That's going to be an interesting topic to discuss, I believe. And maybe also after that, kind of like closing it out with like hopes and wishes for the next season, or something that we just expect to see maybe down the line. And then finally chat questions. So that's the plan for now. And yeah, I guess we can just jump right in. So let's talk about the Witchpowers. So like everyone here has been working on the guides for Season 7, and there is like 25 Witchpowers that are coming to the game. And what do you guys think about them now? Do you have actually been playing around with them in the planner and in the guides? And what came out basically?
Especially trying to make build guides for it, I feel like every time I have to you have to read the entire list. This is probably my least favorite thing. I don't remember any of their symbols, so I just have to go through and reread them every single time. But every time that I read one and I go, oh, wait a minute, this one's really cool. Oh, actually, maybe that would fit into this build. And I go over to that build and I realize I'm already at the cap and I need to have 3 frog powers, and my thing will stop working if I turn it. And that means I need to change my gems. All of this is to say, super cool system. I like it a lot. A lot of people are calling it like, Timu witch doctor experience, which is like, maybe next season we get the paladin board and you get to have all your super cool light powers, and we can just play classes through the season powers. But I think it's a fairly cool thing, and I like having borrowed power back.
Okay. Ava or B, do you want to chime in?
I was about to ask everyone, like, how do you feel about the Soul Harvest season?
Well, Soul Harvest is certainly a very strong represent in all of the builds, I suppose. So for those that are not aware of which one that is, well, in general, like the whole season theme is based on like the Witch Doctor pretty clearly from Diablo 3. But if you don't know that, Soul Harvest gives you like an extra main stat. It kind of like siphons from the amount of enemies around you, and then it can kind of carry forward above, depending on how many enemies were close to you at that point. And that's definitely something that looks like it's going to be pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, the main way to abuse this, at least on the PTR, was to basically just pull the entire pit. So you had like as many monsters around you because you just keep the stacks. And yeah, just reach like 100 stacks, like pull 100 mob, cast 1 skill, get 100 stacks, and then proceed with clearing the pit and retaining those 100 stacks. So I kind of hope it's either gets capped at some point, or they kind of like change the mechanics so it just like gets automatically updated based on the number of monsters around you. If it's not, well, everyone's gonna be running with like, I don't know, like 6 to 7k for like legacy classes, and I guess 10k for barbarians.
Big muscle, I hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me barb, me strong.
Well, I think this could definitely be quite interesting for some of the like stat scaling builds, right? Is there maybe something that would work with like there's like Hellhammer, right? Or am I mistaken? Isn't there like something where you can stack strength to like get more DPS or the proc? Or
Oh,
something?
yeah, it was. So there are actually 3 mechanics that scale of strength on Barbarian. The first one being Hellhammer. So I believe that was just the season before I joined that Condis made an Hellhammer Fire Barb that did not perform super nicely, but was tons of fun to play from what he told me.
Yeah.
You also have Rupture, which is actually getting interesting because it does have like that blood explosion scaling with strength. And now it scales as well with Rupture ranks, which makes it kind of interesting since you can turn it into a core skill. And well, the remaining one is the new one, and this is Earthquakes, and Earthquakes scales of strength. So
I guess I'm gonna talk about Earthquakes quite a lot later in the class balance section. Okay. All right.
Something I didn't think about this. Does Rogue gets dodge chance, right? For Dex. Can you hit 100% dodge chance if you get your main stat high enough?
Well, it's like, isn't it like 6% per 1k dodge? I mean, sorry, 1k dexterity. So it's
yeah, it
so
might be
like
hard.
30, that's like 36% before you add on aspects and gear. I'm just saying, y'all. I've been trying to play 100% dodge build for a long time.
I mean, it's certainly
Yeah,
possible to
well,
reach
dude.
100% dodge on Rogue. I think it's still possible, right? Even after they try to like nerf it and stuff. And at the very least, with like such a big increase in extra main stat, yeah, it might happen. So someone makes these kind of builds. Personally, like on hardcore, I don't really pursue these 100% dodge builds because you can still die to like ground effects and stuff. But yeah, it's probably possible.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the thing I'm kind of most concerned about is if every multiplicative thing on these witch powers and every additive things is actually multiplicative or additive. Because I'm fearing that there's going to be a lot of, oh, this is additive, and it ends up being multiplicative for absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
So even with all of these like main stat shenanigans and everything, there are so many things we have yet to discover, I think, as well, from just playtesting.
Yeah.
That's like half the fun of the season, though.
Yeah.
Finding out an aspect doesn't work and being like, all right, everybody, go update your guides.
Let's move.
This thing is trash.
Yeah,
Like
this is
specialization,
one
right?
wonderful macro. I love that as well. Yeah, when I realize like the stuff that everyone's really hyped for is just not working the way it should.
It's just, it's a little sprinkle, it's a little something in there for you to discover. You think you know everything, and then bada boom, bada bing.
Okay, so
Hey,
maybe
man, I
maybe for the
remember-
audience that doesn't know right now, so here on the left side we have like the 2 guys that are basically living in the training dummy room, and then here on the right side we have like okay, like I guess Pete also like does a lot of testing there, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like 3 guys that are coming out of the dungeon here, basically. Oh man, but yeah, it is what it is, I guess. Sometimes I guess you have to wait and see and like how everything will shake out in the end with the Witchpowers. But any of your favorites, maybe, Ava?
Oh, I saw that and something had crit damage on it. So aura specialization, for example, I'm like, yes, this is gonna be a juicy precision scaler if it's gonna be accidentally crit, multiplicative.
It is.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it was on the PTR, yes. So that sounds like it's gonna
Yeah.
be. And it seems like the number
So-
is way too low for it to be additive, so it kind of has to be.
Yeah. So like we'll see. I gotta echo Mac's sentiment as well about the just having them to have more customability, like customization in general, is just good for the game. I like the borrow power system. Whether or not it will be impactful and not like, yeah, we're gonna use these 3 witch powers or whatever for every single build, I guess remains to be seen. But I'm kind of hyped to just see how it feels and make some funky builds out of it. Well, I don't make many builds to be honest, but I enable you guys to do more decisions or more informed decisions.
Okay, so what is your thoughts maybe on the like more damage-oriented witch powers? So there's like some that are not really utility, but they're actually just like there to like deal damage to enemies. And do you have any hopes for those? Is that like a thing? What do you guys think?
I think it's gonna be lucky hit hell, where I'm gonna have to make sure that none of them have unintentional lucky hit that we could break. That's my only my first thought when it comes to random damage instances. Because I mean, Shrouded Condoras, anyone? Metamorphosis, anyone? Like we we have way too many high lucky hit damage procs in this game right now.
Yeah, I mean, on my side, I'm more like, well, I'm a simple man and I'm a simple barb. I just look at the combos that work, and from what I can say, it's probably pretty much like the same for everyone, right? So you just slam Soul Harvest on every single of your builds, at least the ones that do pit pushing. I'm super interesting in the Witching Hour, like adding a Witching Power tag to your core skills. And well, in the Barbarian case, any core skill is pretty much an overpower build, so you just take the full overpower package, right? And like the remaining one will be the interactions between the Occult gem, which is called, I believe, Voice of the Stars, the one that adds those witch tags to your ultimate, and Breath of the Coven, that gives you like that 15% attack speed per witch power tag. So you just end up at like 45% attack speed bonuses. And I feel like it's super interesting for ultimate focused build. And kinda reminds me of like the season 2 vampiric powers that gave you like a massive increase of attack speed. Where you would just like basically start like the gameplay will be like much faster. And I feel like that's basically what's gonna happen next season. Like I do not know how you guys feel about like the power creep that those witch power give, but I'm honestly kind of stoked for it. Like, it's gonna make every like slow ass build feel better. Like builds that had issues reaching pit 100 or leveling up your glyph to 100 will be like have like a much easier time. But maybe just too much. It's too much. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
Well, go
yeah,
ahead.
to like quickly touch on the first part of it, I am excited to see if any of these skills have scalability. They're going to gain like a bunch from your core, especially gaining a bunch from your core stat, actually scaling them as well. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm going to see Woody killing Uber Duriel with just fire bats out and like some weird combo with Subo or something. But I think that the average casual player loves this the most, like when people first kind of caught on to blood boiling and the vampiric powers, and that like you could just overpower and hit the whole screen, and then any build that could do that felt great. I think that's some of the more exciting things where like people get to put on a bunch of these wild powers and walk around and it's just mayhem on the screen. I think that's super cool. To touch on the idea of power creep, I'm very like diametrically opposed to even using the term power creep in video games where there is not a competitive meta, because what does power creep mean? Especially when the only real concern is whether or not all the content becomes trivialized, right? And that seems like a simple fix. You add 50 more tiers onto the pit, and at the end of it, you give me a cool mount or something. But I think this is a little bit faster than I assumed it would happen, but I assumed like maybe 2 seasons post pit is when we would be realistically hitting tier 150, and then they would have to like re-squash or add difficulty to it. Maybe we've accelerated a little bit, but I'm not necessarily concerned with an insular season causing that to happen as opposed to the base game causing that to happen.
Okay.
That's interesting, actually, because I'm kind of like on the opposite end of this like argument here, I guess, myself, where I'm like, I feel like, you know, the gap that we see between season 6 and season 7, and even like between season 5 and season 6, you know, like it feels like we are accelerating, as you say, extremely fast, you know, towards basically what is Diablo 3. Not just in like how the game is played and the systems, now we get the armory, for example, and, you know, whatever, but also like just this whole like, you know, progression, the whole like, you know, everything outside of the pit is just kind of a joke. And I think people are gonna really feel that. Even people that are usually very casual and kind of just cook their own little build, and, you know, maybe didn't even reach Torment 4 last season, they will really feel this upgrade they have gotten, not just on the Witchpowers, but in general, we have seen a lot of like, you know, buffs to a lot of classes and so on. And it seems like everything has kind of moved up a little bit. And I think that very quickly, people are gonna feel kind of extremely bored with anything that's not a pit, because there's just no challenge. So that's just sort of my my expectation. Yeah,
I must agree as well, because I do feel like the difference between even for weak builds for Spiritborn this season, like last season, it felt like nothing really mattered anymore after a while when you got to like, you know, 110 in pit, and being able to like speed farm, let's say we speed farm 150s, how is anything else in the game gonna feel relevant in any sort of capacity? Like you sneeze at a boss and it dies, that's gonna, I don't know, it's gonna take all the fight out of the game, I suppose, in a way.
I mean, for Barbs,
Um,
we say we fart on the boss and he dies because it's earthquakes now. But
True.
I mean, okay, we're kind of like leading into the next topic already, but I want to like refocus maybe on the Witchpowers themselves a little bit. So, you know, of course, the Witchpowers add power to the character. You know, it's a borrowed power theme, so you haven't actually gotten one of these in a little while now. And I guess a lot of people are also excited to see this coming back. And I mean, we talked about this. There are cool combos to make, and it seems like there will be like maybe cool, you know, interesting stuff that we find as well, depending on the testing. And of course, there's something kind of like new to explore here that adds something to every build. But on the other hand, I also hear some people saying stuff like, oh, this is basically just season 2 again. You know, we literally had this already like a year ago, right? Because they have the same interface, you have the same, like, you know, 5 powers you slot in, and okay, the powers are a bit different themselves, but it's effectively doing the same thing. So what do you think about them bringing back something that we've had already in almost the same fashion? And yeah, maybe how could this potentially be even like a permanent thing that would really shake things up for like, you know, long-term, like, you know, like build progression, for example, in the game?
I mean, in my case, I'd say what I appreciate is that there's still like a little bit of utility in those powers, since you will have like multiple tools to like pack mobs, tools to apply vulnerable for classes that have a hard time applying it. You have like defensives, pretty much a little bit of everything. Yes, it is probably true that every single class is gonna lean toward any witch power that gives them damage and not that much on the utility side. But I feel like the powers are like kinda balanced in what kind of like gameplay possibilities they give you. The second thing I do appreciate a lot, and this is like completely new, is the whole like giving us potency effects and the option, as I said, like to transform our core skill or our ultimate skill and add like new tags. Like adding tags to skills is something that's been done like for every single class, I believe now. But the way they interact now, I feel like it's a good mechanic concept. And I'm kind of stoked to see where they're gonna push this for the next season, if they do.
I don't necessarily feel like borrowed power is a problem as well. Like the concept on its own is okay. It's just that the content like available to us needs to match the power creep that it enables, I suppose. So the fact that like having these borrowed powers that could enable build archetypes and such just also kind of guides the player base to like, oh, what do we want from the classes, right? So if we find a specific build archetype that is enabled just from these borrowed powers, nothing is to say that that doesn't make it into the game at some point to some capacity.
Transform
Sort
into
of.
an aspect that they've done before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not opposed to having a borrowed power system, and I don't think it was bad the first time around. So I don't know why it would be quote unquote bad now either, right?
There's two things I want to hit on very quickly. I think it's like I think it's approaching like reductive to say that this is just season 2 powers. Season 2 vampiric powers were so much more like 5 aspects you got to add on to your character. This is much more what you can do with these things is like significantly more complex than that ever was. Now, it's not, you know, game-changing, mind-blowing levels of, oh my god, they've reinvented ARPGs. But that being said, whenever we start talking about these pain points of like, oh, but like, what is the possible negative outcome of this thing? I kind of I want to like point all of us back to two things I think are like the outlying issues, which is the idea of like current power in the game and ability to survive things in the game. Like we stopped having to use Tyrell's Might in its entirety, and every build can run Shroud of False Death. It has no survivability stats on it. We used to have like 4 stats of damage reduction on our characters, and they just don't exist anymore. And I point to like all of that as more so there isn't a high enough difficulty in the game currently. Like I think tier 4 maybe even should have like 2 or 3 times the negative requirements to be able to survive in it and cap and stuff, if we really want there to be an endgame that's like interesting and hard to achieve inside of. But the powers themselves, yeah, they're going to bring back some of the powers, right? I think if we don't see a generic unique item that summons a Purinado in the game moving forward, then we have failed at playing a good video game. Like they're going to bring back at least one of them, because that thing's probably the coolest. That and Frog and Grow. Yeah. Those are the best things that they came up with just for pure memeability. And then, yeah, I mean, that would be my guess. One of like the fan favorites. Everybody loves having a little dude run around with them that like eats monsters and spits them off a cliff or something.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very well said there. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. You know, I also do appreciate the season theme, like the borrowed power theme, that, you know, just allows us to be more creative. And like, even when there's someone who really likes to come back every single season and play the same build, like personally, for example, pretty much every single season I play some Twisting Blades at some point, you know, and of course, you know, you just come back to that same build you've already played like 6 times or something, but it's still different yet again. Even if they didn't actually touch the build itself, for example. So that is really like one of the big advantages that these season themes bring. But of course, as Macro said, I think, you know, like kind of like we get stronger out of nowhere, kind of, right? We just played season 6, and, you know, not only did we get the season theme, but we also got generally buffs to everything, you know, because, you know, they just kind of try to lift up the underperforming things and whatever. So like these two things now accumulate into like, you know, this massive, you can't really say it any other way, power creep that we're actually seeing. And in fact, we had to like rescale our tier list, for example, on Maxroll, to actually make sure that we don't end up with like 20 builds in S tier or something. And we kind of just raised the bar, which actually makes it seem like, you know, some builds got worse, even though they didn't, you know. So this is like kind of this weird scenario where it's like everything just seems so crazy right now. So I'm not sure if you have any thoughts about that.
I would say bring back Profane Mind Cage, but like a juiced up version of it.
Yeah.
I actually heard exactly that the other day, and I was like, yeah, but didn't they make torment levels to do exactly this?
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, like the issue I have with like torment levels is that at some point, I feel like trying to solve like the all resistances and armor issues is gonna be like too much if they keep like the same scale going forward to like Torment 5, and you need like 60% more all resistances and like 500 armor. So maybe if they make it like scale the requirement, if they make it scale like a little bit less.
Yeah, but I mean, what's the issue exactly? I mean, this is, you know, this is like another like kind of gearing puzzle to solve, and also something that will naturally kind of like eat into how much damage multipliers can you actually stack on your character, where, you know, you have to actually build into some defenses as well, which I think it's kind of a little bit of what we're looking for as well when you think about going to a higher difficulty, you know?
No,
It's just like
yeah.
it's just
Sorry.
a compound of problems at the moment, because it's also the fact that like certain builds this season, like they didn't even have to care about armor and resistances. They just got Earthen Bulwark so frequently that you didn't have to care about anything. So they haven't done themselves any services like adding stuff like the rune words, because even that just enabled a very unhealthy playstyle for a lot of classes and specs as well.
Well, I guess when
I
it
don't
comes to
think-
Spiritborn in particular, I guess they're talking about it was also the fact that just life stacking was just kind of the meta because of the Viscous Shield bug, right? So people were running around with like 30k life, and then it just didn't really matter if you had resistances at that point. But I guess going forward is not really what we're gonna do. So it's just not really an efficient way of scaling your defenses. It was just like enough, and you know it gave you more damage. So that's why people did it.
I mean, overpower is still a thing, and it scales the same way. So
Yeah.
like,
Okay,
I'm
that's
thinking-
stacking could still be a thing, you know.
I'm thinking they should do something like a stat squish, maybe. Like they'll take all the stats on the things and cut them in half again, and maybe we'll see what happens there. No, but more seriously, I think there's more so just like things that, like before we need to talk about like a full systemic change. Like one, the character sheet being able to overinflate those stats and then scale off of it. That's just bad. It's just bad. It's a bad across the board. It will always be a problem. Overpower giving you like 8,000 additive damage for free just because you built your character competently. That's probably a problem as well, right? It's something that they would need to do walking into a next season so that people don't currently feel like they're getting scammed out of anything. But they're you are correct that we have very quickly accelerated to kind of a breaking point where it's like, maybe all the damage numbers did get too high again. Like maybe that is an issue. And I'm positive it's at the forefront of their minds when they're considering stuff like this. The worst part, the vast majority of people kind of just don't care about that, and they just like that the numbers are big and it helps them to be able to play the game and feel good while playing the game. And I'm not sure that me being negatively impacted by it should override them being positively impacted by it. But we tend to think of it from like a game health perspective and like a total ecosystem of players, and it's just like, yeah, the 30 of us who think that way will consider it at this level, but like the vast majority of people just do not care.
I mean, that's a fair point. Obviously there's a large crowd that is also like very excited to just jump in like in the Diablo season and just like blast, right? If you compare to PoE, for example, PoE is like the extreme polar opposite where you log in, you start on the beach with nothing, you get smacked to death in like 2 hits by the first monster that you encounter, So yeah, it's like this really like a complete opposite end there of the spectrum, basically, and it's kind of funny to see like the hilarious gap that actually exists now between the two games. And I guess going forward, we can probably also just expect that to remain similar as well. I guess I don't really expect like a big turnaround here in like D4 or something, but I guess like especially like the engaged blasters and like the content creators, it seems like when you compare the two games, it's just like so much less to kind of really chase and go after and like kind of like try to prove yourself in D4 if you compare this to PoE, which at least personally makes me a little bit sad now looking at the things I could try and challenge myself with in PoE, for example. So maybe if they ever decide to like not necessarily make the entire game very hard, but at least add something, not just the pit. The pit is there, and okay, you can like bash your head against the wall, but it's mostly just a DPS and a gear check, and not really too much of like anything exciting in terms of a skill check most of the time, outside of maybe some builds that are somewhat complicated to play or so. So that's kind of like the point that I would like to make here. I feel like there is something missing that doesn't have to take anything away from anyone.
I feel like the problem with Diablo has been you basically get to a point where you either get one shot by everything or nothing does damage. There's literally no in between. It's either you go into a pit boss and you're like, oh, well, this unavoidable thing just did my entire health bar. Or this random shadow mechanic from this pit boss just decided to shotgun me out of the blue where it wasn't even pointing my direction kind of thing. There's never really like, I mean, using PoE2 as an example, bosses where you're like, okay, that boss is going to do this animation now, so that means I should do this. It's like, oh, boss exists. I got bonked on the head, even though I couldn't do anything. And there is nothing I can do to fix that in Diablo. And it feels weird, because there's like is only the massive extreme of, yeah, I'm just gonna die to this and there's nothing I can do.
Like there's like a good solution for it though. The way when they introduced the stacks on bosses, like the same kind of stack we had like on Lilith since season 0, when they applied that to the pit bosses. Like I don't know about you guys' experience, but during season 4 it was quite important, at least at the start, to like start dodging some of the mechanics. For example, that lovely sharpshooter guy that we have, Rip Bozo, please don't come back ever. You will be
now,
able like to
now we
tank,
have Mother's
one or two
Judgment instead.
abilities,
Aren't you
but-
happy?
Yeah, not really, but hey, at least I don't get that one-shotted. Like I feel like if they added the option for like more bosses, maybe like elite with like quad affixes on them, to like give you stacks like those that you would have like to carry on till like the end of the run, it will like kind of like force you to play good or accept that at some point you're gonna get smacked. And I feel like that's like a good solution. Just don't make it cap at 3 stacks.
Yeah, there's certainly some things, especially maybe after like certain tiers in the pit. Let's say, you know, after 100, when you have kind of like achieved anything that you need for your character progression with like leveling your glyphs and stuff, this can be like completely optional and just like harder. And, you know, there can be like any kind of like new rule set coming in or something, right? Like that, right? And I think that's a very good suggestion. It's actually something I've discussed at some other point as well, I think. With something like, you know, the stacks kind of like ramping up throughout the run already, you know, not just in a boss fight, but let's say every time you actually stand in like a frozen affix explosion from an elite, you get a stack or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So there could be something a bit more interesting and dynamic here, I guess, introduced that would kind of solve the problem that Ava talks about with like, okay, there is like this, you know, extreme of either you just survive everything or you don't. And I guess if you're like generally on the tankier side right now, for example, which I guess we are, like I feel like in season 6 we have just become incredibly tanky. I didn't actually lose a single hardcore character the entire season pretty much. And you know, after like 600 hours, like it was actually crazy. And yeah, like, you know, the game has become very easy on that end. So actually introducing a system like that could be a really good solution to spice it up and, you know, you add a leaderboard to that and voila, right? So you would actually have something kind of interesting going there without even like tweaking the rest of the game or even like introducing a whole new system necessarily.
I think we're kind of dancing around the concept. We just need to come up with a word that isn't Atlas map so that when we say it out loud, the like Blizzard devs won't get like mocked for copying a good thing. But we're talking about Atlas map. Like profane mind cages are a very low tier form of Atlas map, being able to opt into difficulty for reward, which you can kind of do in Infernal Hordes. That's kind of like the whole concept of it. You're building your Atlas map for that horde as you go. I think a lot of people can appreciate that type of content since we already know that people love Infernal Horde, and bringing that level of like customization to keep showing it an achievement, to keep showing a prowess. Like, what's the difference between my build that does tier 100 and your build that does tier 100 other than the timer? Nothing. But mine does it with 4 hatred marks on it, and the hatred marks are doing these and whatever. Like, that would be sick. A fully opt-in thing. The thing that I notice specifically in the D4 community is the moment that something does exist, though, the immediate outrage is my homebrew build can't do that thing. And it's how much does Blizzard want to deal with the headache of trying to manage that expectation for the players, because they have tried and they have not succeeded. It's just straight up, you know, the very loud people who want to be upset kind of no matter what happens will find a way to make it so that if I can't do it, nobody should be able to do it. And it's like, okay, all right. I also wouldn't want to try to deal with that, not to do their job for them. But like, I do think we do all want an Atlas map. It is just one of the coolest ways to engage with an ARPG, if we're being honest.
Yeah, fair enough. say like any other like thoughts on this? We kind of like slipped off into this topic of like, I don't know, discussing like high-end pits and challenges now, but it was very interesting to go through this. But do you have any other like remarks here before we move on to class balance and the tier list?
I mean, honestly, like the most fun I've had in this game was probably trying to figure out how to not die instantly in season 0 doing like Nightmare 100, right? Like just the problem solving aspect of this is attainable. I mean things die quickly, but so do I. Like that balance, trying to find like a way to approach that was like pretty fun. And one of the main reasons why that was even possible was because the game was so slow. It's very difficult to make the game challenging and make forcing you to be durable when you're also expected to go at the speed of sound.
Yeah, that's fair point. I guess it's very interesting to kind of compare, like, it wasn't even that long ago, right? It was like 1.5 years ago. And I also remember, like, you know, the first time I did like the T109 dungeon on hardcore, like this was like, you know, an incredible event. And, you know, after like, I don't know, half an hour in the dungeon or something, I finally managed to take down the boss in like some epic 8-minute encounter or something. You know, trying to dodge every single thing. Yeah, it was quite something. Yeah, I remember that. But yeah, of course, this was kind of like on the very extreme end of challenge and difficulty, I guess, that many people would never really be able to achieve. But I mean, if it's like completely optional, doesn't really matter that much, right? If it's like, if we're talking about, for example, in the current game with like Pit 100 plus, you know, it's completely optional. There's no reason to do it at all, right? So you could just literally just do anything, and I don't think anyone has to feel bad about it, even if they don't reach the same numbers as someone else. I guess that's just kind of the general expectation. There will be blasters that blast, and there will be other people that don't, and I don't think this is really anything that, for example, Blizzard has to worry about. But yeah.
I mean, I agree, and I think that in that direction, I guess it's in that direction that they made the whole Torment 1 to Torment War to Torment 4 scaling. So people could actually reach Torment, and then going from Torment 1 to Torment 4, I guess the initial idea was, it depends on how much you invested in your build, but you still get like the same kind of drops, just a little bit less. I guess the issue is, though, that as shown, people want to play the hardest difficulty. They want to blast it. So you end up, at least for like blasters, like you guys, you do end up in Torment 1 for like what, like 1 or 2 days at best. And then it's like straight up Torment 4. I'm not sure what's like the community feedback on it. Did everyone like pretty much like switched instantly from Torment 1 to Torment 4? Or did they feel that kind of like progression from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3 and 3 to 4?
I guess it would really depend on like what kind of power level your build is. Like if you play like one of the SC builds, like if you played Spiritborn in season 6, like you could equip like the crappiest items, and you could basically go straight to Torn 4 with like no paragons or so. Like as long as you understood the, you know, for example, how the bugs worked, and you know, like the most important aspects of the build, and you had a Capeleke lying around, you were done, you know. So this is, I literally went in like on one of my Spiritborn, and what did I do? I think I did like something with like blue items only or something, like a Torment 4 dungeon or something like that. I don't know. I did some meme run like this, and it didn't take me long to take down the boss. You know, like it was like a 20-second fight, even only or something. So that was like how the state of Spiritborn. Yeah, so that was a bit crazy. But yeah, I guess like the bigger thing is that, yeah, like it's very easy to kind of like skip through the progression steps really fast, and this is kind of goes against the original design of what Torment levels were supposed to be, right? You were supposed to go from Torment 1 to Torment 2 to Torment 3, and I guess you do that to some degree, but I feel like you kind of like rush through them relatively fast. You know, it's not like in Diablo 3 where you get like this one item and suddenly you jump like 3 Torment levels or something,
Yeah.
or you finish your set and you go up from like, you know, Torment 6 to Torment 16. So we're not there, luckily, but there's also not really much left in between Torment 1 and Torment 4, I feel. Where it's like, okay, you get like your most important items, you farm, you know, a few boss mats, get your unique that you need, and, you know, you wait for the aspect to drop, and then boom, you know, you go up, and then the glyph levels kick in, and that's it. So, yeah.
I mean, even me with my home-cooked Thorns build on Spiritborn without the bugs could just breeze through Torment 1 to 4. So I don't know. It was not what we expected, I think, in terms of progression anyway.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I guess it's time to close this topic and let's move on to the overall balance of the classes. Cool new builds that you're excited for, that you've been working on, or just something that you're looking forward to, and the tier list. So, what is your like general impression here with like where we landed with the balance overall?
Well, I thought it was really cool that they finally deleted the sorceress from the game. I felt like they've been trying to do that for a while. No, I think there's clearly something like very hard about balancing Sork and like getting it into a good spot. It's either Immortal and Makuna is running like 150s perfectly teleporting, or nobody's playing it, right? But I don't know. Like I said, Necromancer's eating really good. All of our builds, even our worst build, like the Long Dead Infinimist, that I think I'm the only person who remembers that thing existed, will be able to run tier 100. So anybody trying to play a Necro on a competent build will be able to complete their class, like be able to complete their character over a season. And I think that's like a pretty good place for a class to be, with like one or two like outliers. Like Bloodwave is going to be insane. Like god tier level, if you were playing the Spiritborn before, you should go play this class. And then we got awesome new Blood Spear, which I think everybody's going to be super stoked about. I'm putting it right now around like tier 130, 135, probably at the top end, which is also just insane to say out loud. For normal builds that weren't, doing quintillions of damage, that's an insane thing to say. But at least from where my class is standing, every single one of them is viable. They are good or better at doing different things, so you can kind of pick your poison. With the armor, you'll be able to swap between them. We kind of say this all the time, but I really think that this is probably going to be the best season of Diablo 4 to play, which I'll eventually stop saying that, once they stop giving me better and better seasons.
That's what I heard on the YouTube ads. So that reminds me of something. But yeah, thanks for the input.
I mean, can I say anything but Shadow Clone? After a full year of bug reporting every single interaction that doesn't work for that goddamn spell, it's finally here. Like they said, I mean, Shadow Clone actually hit the gym and became a Chad over this season. And it's going to be really, really, really nice to actually be able to make builds around it. We have found some interesting bugs with Grasp of Shadows and other funky interactions that I have no clue if they're going to remain, but I'm actually super stoked to see what Shadow Clone can do. Now I just need them to only make tunnel maps so I can, abuse Grasp of Shadows, pen shot bouncing all over the shop.
Can you
be...
Can you elaborate a little bit on that if you want?
So basically, by complete accident, we were testing Shadow Clone just to see if the interactions worked. And I want to see what happened with Grasp of Shadows using Shadow Clone and seeing if it did, funky business. And I used Eagle Horn for Rogue, which every fourth pen shot bounces off of walls. And I just so happened to trigger a Grasp of Shadow procs from my fourth pen shot, which then bounced off of walls. And every single time that bouncy pen shot hit a target, it spawned more pen shots from a non-existent Shadow Clone, all bouncing off of walls, and all of them created more pen shots bouncing all over the shop. So basically, if you have a high density map with a lot of enemies, you can have a couple of hundred pen shots bouncing around for, shits and giggles.
And then you walk into the boss room. Yeah.
Yeah, and boss is going to be like, hi, and nothing's going to happen. So we'll see what happens. But there are going to be a lot of bugs now, probably bugged interactions that, like lingering old code or some stuff that will make Shadow Clone pretty interesting. We'll also see Shadow Clone decide to stand in a corner and look pretty and not do anything after the bug fixes. So the overall strength of Rogue is kind of up in the air, at least for Shadow Clone builds. But Roa, and DT is looking pretty juiced as well.
Yeah, I think to talk about the Rogue here real quick a bit more. So I think a lot of people are really hyped to see Shadow Clone actually becoming a bit of a viable option now. It was kind of like the only rogue skill that was just like never useful. It was like this entire bug fiesta, a noob trap that people thought might be good. And I also remember a long time ago when I actually thought it would do something until I learned it didn't, right? And yeah, so at some point it just kind of got forgotten. And at some point actually like told Blizzard, man, just delete that fucking skill, start over with a new ultimate. This is a disaster. And yeah, apparently they have been able to fix it now, so let's see how this will go. But yeah, in general, like Shadow Clone looking really good. It's gonna go into many builds on a rogue, and as long as there's no like really weird stuff going on, that should be fine. But I wonder if it's also just gonna overshadow, all the other options that exist on the class. For example, I like also just like having a death trap, for example, on the bar as like a utility tool and to get my buffs and so on, right? And now it's just kind of like, okay, Shadow Clone everywhere. So we'll see how this will go, but it's definitely gonna lift up the class. And the rogue was already like doing really well, I feel, for the past few seasons now. So they were always kind of like hovering, kind of like on the upper end, I guess, of the class balance. And now it seems like, yeah, they're not gonna be on like the blood wave level for the Necros, but they have really good builds. Rain of Arrows, Death Trap, Tracing Blades is looking very promising as well. So very exciting stuff there. All right, maybe B, do you want to chime in here?
Do you want to talk about the Earthquake Barb?
Yes.
Okay, so I will take it. Earthquake Barb might be like the first bit 150 build that is not an overpower build. So yes, Macro, this build does not even use overpower.
But but if you turn your number orange, you do more damage. Did it forget
True.
that? Like, what do you mean it doesn't overpower?
I mean, okay, so like the math behind it is pretty simple, really. It's just imagine if you could equip about like 22 Grandfather at the same time. This is like the multiplicative bonus that is applied to earthquakes, just from aspects alone. So
I got no, that makes I got it.
I mean, Bob has many hands, I guess, so no problem.
yeah, I mean, there was some kind of like funny idea lying around that maybe if barbs could wear more barbs in each end, we would have like squared the number of weapons. So that's pretty much what happens with Earthquake at the moment. Yes, the build is like roughly going in the dozens of trillions of damage per second. We will see where it goes, but the good thing about it is, well, it's not an overpowered build, so no one can blame us for that. For abusing like max life everywhere. And it's like super accessible. Like it doesn't require any mythic. You just need aspects, really. And that's about it. And also you can use it on like Whirlwind, you can use it on Leap, you can use it with Bash and Hota. You can put Earthquakes anywhere, it's gonna work. So yep, just have fun with it.
Seems good. I wonder if they're ever gonna bring back some actual like kind of like old school Barb builds as well. I feel like in the last few seasons, Barb has always been drifting more and more towards like earthquakes, twisters, and this is basically it. And then okay, there was Mighty Throw, which was kind of like a breath of fresh air, but it was also bugged in various ways that made it quite powerful. So I think those bugs are gone now, right? So Mighty Throw is probably gonna be like pretty solid, but not on that same level.
Yeah, so there are still like a couple of interesting things with Mighty Throw. The main one being, well, it's still an overpower build. Overpower is still very strong, so it's gonna work on. Still, it's gonna be like the same thing for like every single core skills. Unfortunately, the fixes to Mighty Throw snapshotting were not actually pushed during the PTR, so we couldn't really test what will become of Mighty Throw. I'm still expecting it to be like fairly strong, for the sole reason that the multiplier is super good, and same as other core overpower skill, we can play with like juice them up with the Witchpowers, especially Witching Hour. So we will see where it lands, but definitely like pet 120 plus tier, so that should be fine.
It's kind of crazy to think about this. I mean, like just looking back at season 6, where it's like there wasn't really that much that outside of like the very extreme high end, even got to like 110, 120 or so, right? And now it's like like Macro is talking about some builds that reach like 130, 135 or something, and the barbs, the earthquake probably gonna even go to 150. Like you know, it's not just that it's a few tiers higher, right? Like, it might sound like
No.
there's not such a big change in, like, you know, the power, but you have to imagine like every single tier, or rather, like the best way to think about it is like 5 tiers is like roughly double or so the HP, I think. So going from 120 to 125 is times 2, then to 130 is times 4, and then, you know, times 8, times 16, times 32, times 64 to reach to 150 basically. So, you know, the numbers have gone up, yeah, quite a lot. So it's
Small
just, yeah, small amount, yeah. It was a nice little update here, I guess. So
What about build diversity? Like, is it going up for you boys? Like, do you feel like there's going to be much more builds to play this season rather than like season 6? And I'm not just talking like F tier builds, right? But decently powered builds. Because I feel like every class got pretty much like updates or good damage or good mechanics for all their builds, not just like the build of the season, right?
well, I guess one thing to consider here is that, like, what is the build diversity really for? Like, what are you looking at, right? So I guess we talked about this earlier with, like, you know, for example, Torment 4 becoming relatively trivial now thanks to like the Witchpowers and the updates. And yeah, basically every build will get there if you try at least a little bit. And, you know, you will blast through Torment 4, you'll take down tormented bosses easily and so on. So I guess on that end, you can say, yeah, the build diversity is incredible because, well, every build just one-shots everything at some point, right? So this is it. And then if you say, okay, like pay to 100, or let's say close to 100, when it comes to like finishing your glyphs at least, right? Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
for some builds it might be a bit of a struggle, but if everyone can kind of get to that point where your glyphs are maxed out, you only need 5 glyphs anyway, right? It's not that much. So if like the last few tiers are maybe a bit of a struggle and you have to, like, you know, fight your way through, then sure. But, you know, I guess also most builds will get to the point where they will actually basically do hundreds in the pit. And this means, yeah, technically you can say the build diversity is perfect because everyone can do anything. But of course, you know, there's always like this kind of comparison of like how easy is it to get there? How much grind do you have to invest? You know, some people like the grind, some people just want to blast and like, you know, go to the highest tier as fast as possible. So I guess this is something that is a consideration here.
Okay.
I mean, like right now we have 10 endgame builds that are all fairly distinctly different. Well, as different as the necromancer can get, considering you have your 1 damage skill and then you have your, you know, corpse tendrils and your soul rift, and whether or not you need to have blight on your bar and stuff like that. But as far as like distinctly different gear, distinctly different gameplay experience, what they are and are not good at, and whether or not you can complete your character, 10 builds that like we will cover with 2 or 3 more. You can do it, and I don't personally think you should do it, but you could, and you could clear a tier 100 with it. You're just gonna not enjoy yourself really across anything else. So as far as diversity is concerned, it's really pick your poison over here.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about all the classes. Like if you're looking at the Maxwell guides, for example, like I think at this point, pretty much every class has like 10 plus endgame guides that we maintain. We even made some new ones. For example, Spiritborn is getting a Toxic Skin guide, Razorwing guide. I think we have like something new on the Druid for the Lacerate. What else is coming? Like there's a bunch of stuff that is new. Incinerator guide is coming finally. So yeah, we don't have like a Druid or a Zork represent right now, but you know, we had our meetings, we discussed this stuff, and yeah, it's definitely looking fine. And you know, we're talking about Zorks, and you know, they're definitely the weakest from what it looks like. But even Zorks are gonna have a relatively good time, I think, and even they will get to like, you know, pit 100 and max out their glyphs relatively easily. And if you can do pit 100, then well, you can crush anything in the game, you know. So it's not like Zorks have to feel bad about being a Zork, especially when you look at the, you know, the late game scaling with cooldown reduction, Shaco, teleport. You know, Zorks have always been, you know, kind of this like, you know, really high end scaling class as well on that end, and I think it's gonna be just fine for them too. So I guess on that front, yeah.
I love the fact that we're getting to the point where say if even Zorks can make it, we're fine. That's like the sentiment now of the community. If even Zorks can get to hit 100, then we're good.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they didn't really have that many options in the last like seasons, I guess. I know there was like Lightning Spear that came out in season 5. It was like incredible, right? But then,
Yeah.
you know, so far beyond anything else. And now it has been like, you know, tuned down, and, you know, other stuff has been buffed. And I feel like Sorks are getting to a much better spot overall as a class, where previously they only had like this one build every season or something, and that was it. And like for example, myself, like when I play a season, I usually make like multiple rogues. And last season I made like, I don't know, 7 different Spiritborn. I tried out all the builds, and yeah, it's similar with like past seasons as well. Like especially on like my main class rogue, I guess, and now the Spiritborn. So I like to just try out the different builds, and I guess there's a lot of other people out there as well. Now that, for example, the Armory is coming, they might just look at the build guides and they say, okay, I'm gonna play like Quill Volley to get started, farm up my stuff, it's a good build, and then maybe I'm gonna try out this Razorwing build that we have now as well. So they're gonna just put it in this Armory and see where it goes, right? And this is like a huge improvement to like the longevity of the game as well, where people can just like switch it up a little bit, have some fun with something else, switch back if they have to when they realize, yeah, okay, this build is okay, but I can't really one-shot Duriel, so maybe I'm gonna switch back for that, and so I think I'm really excited to see how this will actually go.
I'm one of those silly people that thinks as long as one build exists that can do sort of what you need to do to max out your character, that's fine. So I was when Sork was doing okay with the Mikuna, I'm gonna run everywhere and do Firebolt and kill everything anyway. Fucking not being, weak kind of thing. I still felt like, well, Sork is fine because they at least have that one build where they can do stuff. Not everyone shares that same sentiment, but I think I come from like the MMO background of, well, if my class can have at least one viable build, then I'm good. Here it feels like everyone wants every build to be like viable at the highest level, meaning like clearing everything in the game, doing everything with every build. And I don't think that's ever gonna be something achievable. I mean, like we're memeing about grenades every single time we talk about Rogue, essentially, but like expecting grenades that is a sub skill that, although it has some support, to be outperforming the top builds with synergies from the entire class, I don't think it's ever gonna happen, unless they randomly break it. But I don't know.
I mean, you can always add a 0 somewhere,
Accidentally make negative numbers. We have not seen that happen before.
I mean, I actually disagree with you on this, Ava. I'm sorry. Regarding the wall, if I have at least like one build, I can be happy because I feel like, at least like as one of you fellow blasters and you guys in the chat, I assume, you always do end up trying out like the new seasonal build that is like super juiced up every season, right? And whenever you try to like switch to another build that is not as favored, I guess, by the gods of the season, you kind of feel bad. And I feel like you just blast the season for like 2 weeks and then you try a new build. If that new build doesn't perform even decently, you just end up like, okay, well, I'm just gonna have like to swap back to my old build because this one is kind of bad, and kind of like you don't want to try any other new builds after that because you're kind of like afraid that the next one is going to be just as bad as the one you tried. And I feel like that's something most of the people like kind of experienced during season 6. At least like that's one of the main feedback I got. Like most of the people that started on Spiritborn and then tried to reroll to like legacy classes, they were like, yeah, but it's just not fun. Not just like zooming around, killing everything. You have like to stop to attack. So
I mean,
Wait,
to
what?
be fair-
This class doesn't dash to every enemy with every attack? What is this?
I'm so sorry.
To be fair, I think there's a difference between something being the strongest, as in like maybe 2 times stronger, or whatever, and 1,000 times stronger in the case
Yeah.
of Spiritborn. Like there is a level of like, oh my god, this should never happen with
Yeah.
Spiritborn.
But like, let's face it, if you play like Bloodwave Necro next season, right? Are you gonna what's your feel gonna be like if you reroll Sulk?
So and like I this really comes down to like personal taste. One, and this is not to discredit how anybody feels. You feel the way that you feel. I'm not here to police you. The idea of like the FOMO got me. I can't resonate with this concept. I think that you can use like objective states of comparative build power to look at a thing and come up with like critique and feedback and an understanding of the the difference. When I go and play a season, I pick the build that I want to play as like my build. For 2 weeks, I push on that build as hard as I can, optimizing, coming up with the, if I swap out this one stat or whatever. I have a really good time doing that. Over the next week, with my stash full of all this random garbage I've been picking up the entire time, I go, okay, now I'm going to play the other build the Necromancer has, and then I'm going to play the other build. And if I started off on the stronger one, that actually will often help me in either optimizing or theory crafting the one I'm currently trying. Like, what issue is this version of the Necromancer having that my previous one wasn't? Oh, it's a crowd control issue. What are my options for managing that? I try those over like 2 or 3 weeks, however long that takes me. And I go sick. I played a video game for a month. That was awesome. Oh, everybody shut up. There's a dog on screen. This is all I care about.
You just came in here through the door.
Quick little parasocial. Me and my girlfriend are like so close to being able to afford to buy a house, and the only reason why I need this to happen is so I can get a little pit bull who can just sit with me while I game all day. That's all I care about. And I also think that pit bulls are lap dogs. There we go.
This is best Doggo.
This kind of lapdog, right?
Oh,
this is what you want
dog.
Oh, nice.
We don't have a proper beat dropper stream unless Doggo is here.
Yeah, I just like don't own a dog. I'm so sad. All right, I'm just gonna cry later on. Don't worry about that. But no, sincerely, I just I like seeing what the builds can do, and I go, oh, okay, this build does this. Now I understand what the impact of the changes they made were. If people like it, here's how we can kind of help direct them in the best way possible. And like, that's a season for me. Some people like to play their build forever and they won't play another build. I don't think that really changes depending on like the relative power scale. There are just people who like to play the games in the ways that they want to, and it's kind of a roll of the dice if they accidentally picked the best one, if that's going to then make it impossible for them to enjoy the rest of the season. I always come back to, what are the devs supposed to do about that? There will be a best. If you play it, the logical conclusion is you have now ruined the season for yourself. It doesn't matter if it's one tier, right? It is the best, and going slower is worse. So it's impossible to solve as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, adding to this, you asked me like, would I go back to play Sork if I played, Bloodwave Necro? I played Thorns the entire season when I played. Any further questions? I've lived that season.
Okay. Well, Ava likes to suffer, I guess. I gotta say.
I like figuring stuff out.
Wait, hold on. No. No, this is impossible. How did you play Thorns? Back when you were playing, the dummy room didn't attack you. What do you mean you played Thorns? There's no playing of Thorns.
This season. I played Thorns this season. Spiritborn.
Oh, right.
Because I pretended to be strong.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting to think about how different people approach the game and what they think about like making the different builds and like the power level of builds. But I guess there's always like this kind of like, I don't know, some decision needs to be made at some point, right? For example, if we look back at Season 6, Blizzard decided, okay, we're not fixing the Spiritborn, right? We learned about most of the bugs like in the first few days of the season when, you could have probably easily done some hot fixes and kind of like prevented the worst things from happening, I guess. On the other hand, I guess a lot of people enjoyed, this incredible power that Spiritborn brought. It was a new hype class. People had a good time, at least for a while. But I feel like at some point you just kind of get so jaded and it's like, I don't really want to, play something that is 1,000 times weaker, right? Like, at least when there's like a smaller gap, if it's like ×2 or ×3 or whatever, then you can say, okay, I can still be successful, I can still feel almost as powerful, right? But I feel like no other class even had any relevance at all when you compare to the Spiritborn in Season 6. And this kind of like power discrepancy, it just kind of like ruins the game as well for a lot of people. And also it doesn't really like, cast a good look on the developers, I guess, right? Where like, when you question like how did the stuff slip through and why did they not decide to just keep it, right, for the entire season? I felt like, especially after they announced the mid-season patch saying that, okay, we're keeping everything as it is, yeah, maybe some people rejoiced and were like, oh yeah, nice, I can still keep going. But at that point we're like, I don't know, 1.5 months deep in the season, everyone had their share of playing Spiritborn. And I'm like, okay, like, the season, at least for me, it kind of just dropped dead at that point. I was like, fuck, man, like, you know, why? So that was like my impression at least, and I feel like a lot of people kind of felt the same. They were kind of disappointed that there was just like no attempt in like kind of, you know, bring this back into like a healthy spot where, you know, there would be maybe even like a revitalization of, you know, everything non-Spirit Born, you know, just from a few fixes there or something like that. I feel like this just was a missed opportunity that didn't happen.
It's, you know, it's really, really interesting that we say it like that. I think they need to send out a survey straight up, because like they basically did that, right? They nerfed whatever the bar build was, and then everybody lost their minds, and they promised to never do it again, and then everybody forgot that, and then they're like, why aren't they being nerfed? You send out a survey, literally say, hey, player base, if this comes up again, do you want us to try to address it by mid-season patch? Will that make it better? Here's my counter evidence that everybody would say, no, how dare you try to nerf my thing. The anti-venom bug and the Air of Perdition bug became well known for 2 days before it was fixed. The moment that the anti-venom bug was fixed, the Reddit went up in flames saying, how dare you take away my ability to have my stolen valor? Like, how dare you stop me from doing tier 150? Give me back my bug I didn't know I had, as if you developed it to do that. Was that everybody? Obviously not. Is that a ridiculous outlook? Obviously, yes. But I don't know, man. They just send out a survey, say, hey, do you want us to fix stuff? And just anytime anything happens, they show up, they put out a Twitter post and they hold up the survey and they go, this is what you wanted. We'll send out another one next season. We'll figure out if you want it still. Because they do need to just have a direction and stick to it when it comes to these types of things. I think we can all see that the Spiritborn kind of ruined it for a lot of other people. So maybe it does need to be different.
I think one of the most frustrating things about this is that it's the hot and cold part with bug fixes overall that you were mentioning, Mac. Like if the player base sort of figures stuff like out like this of this magnitude, they're like, oh yeah, this class is now doing 1,000 times more damage than anything else. It's like, how is that even a thing to consider? Like, how much stronger did the barbarians become with the bugs? I can guarantee you it wasn't 1,000 times stronger, but that was just like snap your fingers gone. And like you said, like air perdition bug and antivenom, whatever, snap your fingers gone. Poison imbuement in season 0, season 1, season 2. Oh, it was little bit stronger because some unintended, you know, effect that made it do like 30% more damage. Snap your fingers gone. But 1,000 times waiting an entire season? No. Fix it, please.
Yeah, I mean,
I
for
agree,
now.
and I feel like,
Oh, sorry. Wait, go ahead.
sorry, I feel like this is a challenge. I don't want to be a doomsayer, right? But I feel like that's gonna be happen next season exactly with Blood Orb, with Earthquake Bulb. You're gonna be seeing people like speedrunning Torment 4 bosses like day one with like absolutely no gear. And I feel like we're gonna meet the exact same issue where some of us, I guess, are okay with like seasonal builds being like about like 5 to 10 tiers higher than the rest of the builds. But in the end, those kind of builds are like not even hard to play, not even hard to set up, and they just do like 30 plus tier above the rest. And this is definitely gonna happen next season. Like some of us like run the numbers. This is just gonna happen next season. Like Bob's gonna be like Spiritborn, earthquakes, explosion across the entire screen. Necro Broadway probably like the same thing from like the early gameplay I saw on the PTR. I would say it's hey, at least you have like to play more than one button compared to Barb. So I would not say it is like the most engaging gameplay, and I don't think it's like healthy for the game to have like so much power discrepancies between build. But it is gonna happen next season, and they're gonna need to address it. Either they leave it be for like an entire season, or they nerf it. Like as Ava said, like snap your finger gone.
It's the thing is like I don't even think it's a matter of like them fixing all the bugs at once. If they want to keep the relative power of Spiritborn slightly higher than the rest of the pack just to make it sell the expansion, right? They could have just mathed it out. They look at how the popular builds are doing, like follow the content creators kind of thing, see how much health you're doing, like getting, do the math, very simple mathematics to see how much Viscous Shield was, enabling you in that build. And if that is still putting you within, a reasonable level ahead of the rest of the curve, then you can just fix that bug or any of the other bugs. I don't expect them to fix overpower with a snap of a finger because that could have multiple consequences that breaks the game. But Viscous Shield was probably like 6 times more damage for most builds. That's, I mean, what, 10 pit levels? Like, that's still gonna put them way above everything else.
Yeah, it was probably even much more than that actually on the high end, because it also accumulated into other effects like the Jaguar Hall and stuff, I think. So
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then the Fell Soothsayer explosions and stuff, they were all buffed by like the double scaling of this kind of stuff and triple dipping basically of this insane multiplier. So, but yeah, either way, I mean, we're talking a lot about season 6 here and like what has happened and I guess what we think will happen or could happen again. I guess it just comes down to Blizzard kind of like being a bit more mindful about this. And yeah, it's always like a hot iron, I guess. But at least like looking back at season 6, my impression was like, okay, it was fun for a while, but it was like so oversaturated with Spiritborn at some point, and there's this whole like feeling of everything else is futile, and I feel like a lot of people just kind of quit at some point, and they were just not happy. So you think you do, but you don't, kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, you can do this for so long, but then okay, some people might enjoy this forever, but I think those are actually very few. And a lot of people kind of like felt a bit jaded there. But yeah, anyway, if you don't have any other topics to discuss on the class balance, you want to like talk about this a bit more, or should we move on? They say everyone has like something else to say here on the builds.
I just want them to stop adding new uniques that force me to add another permanent unique to my class. I just like that. That's the only thing that I think, like, the stuff that we got, cool new pants, that's awesome. It's gonna suck when they release a mythic pants and then I don't get to wear them anymore. But I know, Woody, you've been a big proponent of one mythic as like a kind of like a going idea of how to kind of mitigate this a little bit. A lot of my builds are looking at like 5 to 6 uniques equipped on them at this point, and it's like, oh, okay, they're just like stronger than aspects and they have good enough stats. And I wish they were offering a more unique way of playing a game as opposed to just the best way of playing the game. That's like the only other thing. I think that's just kind of like a standing issue that we run into.
Nice cube for uniques when.
I feel like uniques are like too multifaceted to just go into Kanai's cube. If you look at, okay, like just getting the power as opposed to getting the power and the stats of the item, I feel like both kind of play a huge role in the decision making here. And then something that could be kind of getting out of control really fast, right? When a very understated unique has a very powerful effect and then you just stick it somewhere, then that could be wild. But the idea of it is actually interesting, though. I wonder if you're going to get that at some point and just like have more avenues. But yeah, I guess like the next topic kind of leads into this anyway. So I want to talk about progression and the updates that have happened to like legendaries, especially the aspects and the uniques. So for example, Blizzard mentioned that now when you have multiple greater affixes, you have a much higher minimum basically on the unique affixes that appear on the item, so you don't end up with like a 4GA trash tier roll item basically. And yeah, what do you think about how this is gonna go with like the new items coming in? Macro already mentioned a few points. And then also like, what do you think about the progression in general, like how it is right now in the game with like going from level 1 all the way to endgame, Torment 4? Yeah, how does it feel for you?
You want to start, or Ava? Okay.
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I felt like progression going into season 6 was actually pretty fine. I didn't really mind it that badly. The thing that I did cry about more than once was finding 4GA items and seeing it's like, oh, this is gonna be no mineral. That was like the worst part about the entire season and probably sucked out the most joy for me personally. So anything to mitigate that is just going to increase the amount of fun for everyone else. I don't think we're going to magically see best in slot items for everyone just with this small change. It's just going to make, us feel like Blizzard is respecting our time a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, I do feel like the progression is pretty fine. I do miss some sort of some chase in a way, like either be it end game thing that is difficult and you need more gear and stuff, but I don't know.
The big issue I ran into, so to highlight it, right now in Diablo 4 and these changes that they make, I actually think they kind of knocked it out of the park with this. The biggest thing that I ran into was after I hit that 2-week period of trying to min-max my build, and I got a GA essence on kill ring, which means I can reroll this, and now I can set up my build. I stopped getting item upgrades on that build for another full week of blasting because no item came close, even remotely. I didn't get stronger aspects. I think I ended with like 2 or 3 perfect aspects at the end of this last season. And picking up unique items with multiple GAs on them, I never felt good. Like I was never happy that happened. I would like pick it up, look at it real quick, go literally trash. Can't use this. It doesn't matter that it has 4 GAs on it. So I think with the changes that they've put in here, my endgame chase, my continuing to see an upgrade per session, not per minute, not per hour, but per session, has a much higher likelihood of feeling rewarding. And it might add on like another 3 to 7 days for one build's ultimate pushing. And I think that that's pretty decent. The amount of times I picked up a 4 GA unique though, and it was like a min roll on Ebon Piercer, or it was a min roll on the aspects on my boot, so it didn't matter, or it's a min roll on the weapon. Every time I just like, all right, cool, let me salvage this infinitely rare item and turn that into iron chunks so that I can reroll masterworking. I think this is a really good step. I think a lot of people are going to feel less burnout, or at least that's my expectation. And I'm hoping that they approach this ideology of people are willing to grind, but you also have to reward them for grinding when we start talking about things like tempering and masterworking as well. That's the only thing that I think really needs another look at. But as far as my own personal progression, I have a really good time with it. I'm cool that it's a 2 to 3 week process and then you're done with the character, unless you're grinding, Paragon 300.
Well, in my case, I'm not that interested into like the whole leveling progression, so I'm just gonna focus on the item progression instead. And I feel like Blizzard did like a really good job, at least for next season. Like the addition of the new ancestral whisper caches, the fact that you can like exchange or craft amulets and rings is gonna help, because I think all of us were met the issue of, well, I need like a double passive plus main stat amulet, and I can't find it. Especially for like non-spiritborn classes last season, where the market was just pretty much like hardcore SSF feel. You could not find like a single. Trying to find like a 200 mace, ancestral 200 mace last season for Barb was like, you would have like to just check the market for like 2 days, and hopefully you would find one, like one GA one. So the changes they made, like to the way we can get and new GAs, the fact that we're getting like better aspects as well related to the number of GAs they have. Definitely, as Marco said, it's gonna be like much better for like gear progression, trying out new builds. If you don't have like to wait for an entire week to find an upgrade, which is because your aspect has been enrolled, unfortunately, right? So this part is super fine. The only thing I'm still gonna like fight for is I really expected Undercity to be like the main target farming way, and there's absolutely no changes to it. And honestly, it just feels bad to like spend your 50 million gold for an amulet with passive, and you just get like a non-ancestral one with like some shit. I mean, sorry to say it, like some really shitty affixes on it.
But sorry to push back on that. Didn't they like very specifically like point out that a lot of rewards and a lot of things were not functioning as intended, and they address
Yeah.
those things?
I think so, but they
Well,
did
did
not like,
they?
focus at all on it. So
Yeah, not to fact check you mid
no,
mid
if you
podcast,
do, like,
but
please, I hope you're right.
Well, there was nothing specifically in the patch notes that talked about this, so at least not as long as I can remember. But yeah, I guess to like sum up like the points made so far, I guess like the legendary, like ancestral legendary aspects change is very welcome, it seems, and so is the multi-GA higher role of affix on uniques change, and I kind of agree with that. I personally never felt bad, you know, number one, not having my maxed out powers. I kind of enjoyed the chase of trying to get those high rolls. But I do see that a lot of people kind of like want to at least get close to maxing out their builds at some reasonable like time investment. And it was maybe quite a bit too far. And now it feels like it's like maybe too easy, but I guess it's better than it was before from my perspective. And yeah, like the multi-GA unique stuff, that's definitely a good change, I think, as well. But yeah, does anyone know maybe also in chat, like if they actually talked about like the like Undercity and the rewards not working correctly, which is now addressed or something, because I actually don't remember that. And this actually brings me also like another point, which is, you know, we had all these new introductions of systems and reworks of systems in Season 6, you know, they have rebalanced, you know, Helltide, and we have the Citadel, and we have the Undercity, and, you know, all this kind of stuff that we're actually doing with our characters. And now, for example, also, like one big point of feedback that I gave during Season 6 was, for example, that, you know, experience can only really be grinded in the pit effectively. There is Infernal Hordes that is kind of alright, and then there's nothing else behind that. You know, there's like such a large gap between those two systems and the rest, and between those two there's even a large gap still, so that if you, for example, want to try to grind your Paragons to 300 or at least close to it, all you can do is just like 2,000 pit runs in a row until you're there, and this is it, right? You don't get rewarded at all for doing any of the Torment 4 stuff, which on one hand makes sense because Torment 4 is extremely trivial. On the other hand, I mean, you don't even have to go very high in the pit to get a massive amount of extra XP. You can literally run Torment 4 difficulty in the pit, and you still get like triple the amount of XP or something like that. You know, that's how crazy it is. So what do you think about that? And yeah, just like, what is your impressions here? Because personally, I am somewhat disappointed that there were, you know, okay, they did a good job on the balancing and like, you know, overall the theme and all, but on the other hand, they kind of just like neglected all the other systems in the game. Is my impression here.
Yeah, my read on it, you know, this isn't coming from a dev telling me, this is just my read on that concept. The season needs to be flashy. There's not a lot like of flash that comes in with like, oh, and by the way, for the people who understand that there's even like an experience discrepancy in leveling in pit levels, we fixed that so you won't get as rewarded as much. You didn't know it, but you were getting over rewarded. So I think until they have like a more sophisticated answer to that, no joke, dude, I don't think they expect us to be doing like pit tier 120 by this point. That's not an excuse for them, but I can imagine them like looking and being like, oh no, they did it. They broke it. They broke it. Like even outside of the Spiritborn, they're just like, oh no, damn it, pit was supposed to last longer. We added 50 tiers and we didn't expect them to do 100. So you know, that really feels like maybe a next season thing at the earliest is when we see like a revamp to how it works. And then just to prove I wasn't crazy, thanks to Chewy for writing all the news articles for Diablo 4. I posted it in chat. For Kuras to Undercity, fix an issue where the Tribute of Ascendance and Refinement did not properly grant their respective rewards. Fix an issue where Tribute of Radiance did not properly grant ancestral legendary items and scenarios. And then dealt with the fact that like there was that weird gold bug as well. And then also Torment only tributes were being accessed in random parts. But basically these things read to me that these tributes and then like the bargain or whatever you would put on it, they were just never reading each other. So it's like, it's not that the system sucked. It's that the system didn't work, and that sucked, which is a different statement. But yeah.
Thanks a lot, Chibi.
Yeah, thanks for digging it up, and I guess we'll see how this will actually feel now in Season 7. So maybe this will actually kind of like, you know, help with that kind of problem that we talked about with, okay, you play for like 1 or 2 weeks, you get upgrades, and then you hit like this brick wall where you just can't break through anymore, getting anything. And I guess this was kind of the intention of Undercity to solve, right? As like this one thing where you can get gear, you don't really get much else, but you can, invest your stuff that you have been grinding on the way there as you like progress your character in like, more general areas, let's say. And then you have all the stuff stocked up and you go in there and you get the thing you need at some point, right? So this is, I guess, the idea. So I'm quite excited to see if that is actually going to have that purpose now.
I do feel like something that Diablo could probably do better, and this might be a me thing in its entirety. I like the determinism of knowing where I can go to do something, or like having like a loop of sorts. And the feeling of like, oh, I might do all these contents and never see a tribute drop that I need for whatever I want to do feels weird. Like I would rather have like, after I've killed, I don't know, a world boss, I have a 100% chance to get a tribute. So I can hunt for world bosses to do more on the city. Or I can do pit 100 to 10 times and I get a guaranteed tribute out 10 times. Like having some sort of goal to do something else in the game, or like some system in place to have determined rewards of types that at least allows me to do the rest of the content would feel pretty good. I think we were comparing how many times we had different tributes just for fun. And I had like 10 and I barely played. And then I think it was Condes who had like 2. And he played more than me, to put it lightly. So it would be kind of good that these systems that are introducing that is supposed to be this like new thing for us to kind of make use of to farm items, whatever, to have some sort of determinism in being able to do it. The bossing problem was kind of interesting that you just did bossing as a party of 4 and then you got tributes to funnel even more bossing. Like that was like a really weird loop. Would be kind of nice to have something similar for the other tributes as well.
Okay, Beat
To
Dropper, you have
piggyback
anything?
off of that concept.
Okay.
Sorry, real quick. I know that people know where tributes drop from. I have no idea where tributes drop from. I don't know when I get them. I just have some of them. And it's like, oh, I found it. Does anybody want to come do this tribute? I would really wish that they just kind of like told me where I get these things from so that I had a concept of it so I could go farm them. I know you got the boss one
Have
from bosses.
you-
That one's pretty evident.
Have you tried reading the tooltip?
How can you read a tooltip of something you don't have? That's a problem.
Oh, that's really good. Does it tell you on the tooltip? Am I just completely blind?
If you hover it, it says where it drops from. But it says like can be found in sanctuaries. Like great.
Yeah, okay, some of them are very vague, but some of them actually specifically call out also where they are from, so I guess it depends a little bit. But
Yeah, I don't
Kill a
believe you.
random
I
enemy.
think that's propaganda and gaslighting. I'm positive I try to read those things.
But the thing is that, when you go back to what we talked about earlier with like, okay, Torment 4 content is like trivial, and, Undercity is also something that, at least personally, I feel like, okay, it's kind of like a fun little game mode. It has like these 3 levels, and you go through them, and there's like a little bit of like pathing you have to think about, and you get like this insane like cooldown effect that you get like every time that procs when you click on the things or something. And it kind of feels fun to run, at least for a little while. But when I think about, let's say, substituting 1,000 pit runs with 1,000 Undercity runs, then I would probably still choose the pit, honestly, at least on the majority of it. And I feel like Undercity, if that actually is supposed to be developed into like this kind of like end game target farming mode where we fix our character, let's say, with like the last few pieces, then you would obviously expect a kind of long grind to get those pieces, even with target farming involved. But on the other hand, I feel like Undercity doesn't really offer enough to actually make that interesting.
Yet.
I like that. Can we just say that after yet? Can we just leave it there?
In the case of Undercity, I mean, it's been out for a small portion of the game's health. I mean, lifespan overall, right? So
Yet.
surely we can help, maybe. But I don't know. I like the idea of having both and be able to do both for different reasons and not being like, oh, I accidentally it. I don't like that.
That's my I've said this a couple different times, and if you've already heard it, I'm sorry. But the big thing that I personally lost going from Diablo 2 to Diablo 4 was the concept of farming strategies. Not the best leveling to max level strategy. That's fine. That's getting XP. I mean, the Necromancer is very specifically good at doing the Undercity, and the Undercity offers me a currency that you can't get elsewhere. Or my Barbarian is incredibly good at Uber bosses, so that allows me to have a currency and an economic impact that you can't do with other things. You know, this it kind of feeds into the concept of like, oh, how would you even play multiple builds in a season? Oh, well, I need to have my Goldfine Barb, and I have my Cow Killing Javazon, and I have my Blizzard Sork to start me off. Like that kind of concept. And that's kind of missing right now. They try to make it cool with the Infernal Hordes. We can kind of go there to get a little taste of different things that you might need. But they had to walk back this idea that you can't just pick up everything in every single content type because people only want to do content if it can drop all the mythics for them as well. And that really confuses me as a player who simultaneously wants the game to like have a healthy balance of things to do. I think you can't be on the side of the argument where it's like D4 doesn't have any endgame content, but also expect to get every single item from every single endgame system that exists in Diablo 4, because then you're right. You're picking which arena you step into before you get the drops. And I wish that the Undersea was a little bit more different than that. Infernal Hordes was a little bit more different than that. Legion is where I went to go get these things. You know, obviously Uber Boss is where I get my uniques and stuff. That's perfectly fine. But then like the pit offers me this thing that isn't just the pit XP, etc. I think that would bring a pretty massive influx of like reasons to be doing stuff in the game.
Yeah, I think if you look at like what you just explained, there are two systems in the game that do this very well, which is number one, the pit, because this is the only way to get glyphs, or like level glyphs rather, and I guess to some degree XP. And the other thing is Infernal Hordes, just, you know, it's like the main source of Opticite for most people, for the masterworking. You can get it in Enemy Dungeons, and I think it's okay. There's also the tributes, which is also, you know, they're even better actually. They're technically the best, but you don't have a lot of them, so you can't really do tributes all the time. So it's good that for some things there are like different avenues, but on the other hand, Infernal Hordes also has something that's very special, which is the Scroll of Retempering, for example. It also has special legendaries and uniques that can mostly just find there. I think it's fine that some stuff has like a low drop chance in other content, but like a very high drop chance in specific content. And I think Infernal Hordes does that relatively well, even though I personally don't like Infernal Hordes as a type of content very much. I think it does that aspect very well. And I actually really agree that it would be very good to kind of like, you know, specialize content types a little bit more into a certain direction. Like, for example, in the past, we used to have, okay, Helltide gives you steel for Greek War, and then Whispers give you the hearts for Varshan, and so on, right? But I feel like at this point, like no one cares anymore, right? Like everyone has infinite amounts of boss mats. Dude, I literally just went into my character. I was cleaning up my characters from the season to make space for season 7, so I can make new characters. Every single mule of mine, I had like 10 mules. All of them were full of boss mats. Like, I couldn't do anything with this anymore, you know? I literally just deleted it. 10 inventories full of boss mats, you know? And that's just on hardcore, you know? I don't buy this stuff. I just got this, right? It's like, you just get so flooded with this stuff. I don't even have to think about going into Helltide to then do Giguar, you know? It's just so insane. And I feel like there is definitely like a bit of like the charm of some of these abilities that has kind of gone missing. It's like, why do I even want to go there? You know, like I just have it anyway. So that is like my impression at least.
Yeah, so you just like skip activities entirely just because of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get to the point where like, you know, we get like super forced into like, okay, you know, it's like in Diablo 3, right? You play Diablo 3 season and then you just you pay your bounty tax, you know, like every season. Like I knew it in my head. Yeah, I knew in my head, okay, like I played a season, I will have to do 50 hours of bounties, full stop, you know? And I'll do that, you know, I'm gonna sit there for 16 hours a day with Northor on voice chat, and and we're gonna blast bounties for 3 days straight, and I've paid my tax, and then I move on with my life, you know? And, you know, it's kind of like how this worked with Duriel as well, right? With like, you know, you pay your Duriel tax, you just kill him like 1,000 times, you get your Shaco, you get your Perdition, and whatever, right? And then I will never want to see that boss again. And I actually kind of like that a lot, where it's like, okay, I'm kind of done with that thing, and I got the thing I wanted there specifically from that thing. And okay, if I really don't like it, I can also go and do something else that is like, you know, a different type of content that is maybe less efficient at getting me this, but it also has this other perk. But I feel like the crossover is way too large, I feel, in Diablo 4. It's like you just get everything everywhere, and it's like yeah, that's like my impression at least.
I think my biggest problem with the current gameplay loop is the fact that, let's say that, the pit is the end game part, where you're progressing the character, all of the relative strength you're getting throughout the season, it goes into that, right? The fact that you can progress it and basically get no more loot because it's capped at like an artificial level, and you don't really get any benefits from farming it in terms of further character progression, that feels weird. Like the fact that I can get more loot sitting in a health tide, just hoping for Gamba GAs, is kind of weird when you think about it from like a gameplay perspective.
I mean, the same way when it's like more effective to just run Duriel to get mats when Legion exists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that idea. Like, we do get too many boss mats. There was a special type of hell of only being able to get 2 Gregor, like an amount of Gregor runs per hour, and waiting for a hell tide, and then going and doing it again, and then like not getting enough of those to then go do Duriel. That was a special type of hell that I never want to go back to. But it's a suffusion of things throughout all of the systems. And then for some reason, they kind of just made something, like they just kind of made Legion bad. I also feel like they kind of just made Helltide bad. You walk up, I put in 2 hearts, I killed the Hell Maiden, she dropped 2 plain inside, 2 plain legendary items, and I went, what the hell is this? what just happened?
Where's my pinata?
Yeah,
Well, you get
kinda interesting.
5 Grim Favors though for like a minute of work. I mean, that's a very good trade.
Oh,
I think.
sure. Yeah, no, I'll get my Grim Favors. And then but she legit threw out 3 items on the ground. And it was so wild. They're like, we had all these learnings. You all loved Green Helltide. You loved loot on the ground. And we added that to Helltide. I'm like, sick. And they're like, you know what? You don't like getting items from Helltide. So we took them all away. And I'm like, who said that? Who said this out loud? Who was on the panel who said this? It's kind of like these lessons get lost at some point, and then enough people kind of complain, and then it gets reminded. So whatever that next iteration looks like, I'm excited for it. I don't do Helltide. I don't do Legion. I definitely don't do Nahantu Legion. I do not want to follow along, and escort the mine cart, and nobody remembers that they got to go kill monsters. That's another special type of hell. I refuse to go down there. But
you don't like chasing the giant ball 5 times in one event?
Not particularly. I love Team Fortress 2, where in that game I have a gun and I get to shoot other scouts. But here, I'm just waiting for the people on the other side to remember that there's a monster they have to kill.
So what you're saying is they should be PvP.
Sure. Hey, we're getting dangerously close to talking about Diablo Immortal. All right. So you watch out right now.
Yeah, we don't do that here, so move on.
Wasn't me.
Okay, Beat, you want to chime in here?
I guess there's only one thing I kind of want to get back to, which is the issue macro is kind of meeting at the moment, which I feel like it's one of the issue Barbs met back then, which was about the wall. We have so many uniques that they keep adding that we kind of we're out of legs, arms, weapons to slot them, right? I feel like the way they keep changing tempers and adding new ones kind of negate that feel. At least that's the case for Barb. I'll take for example Barbarians during season 5 or season 6. I think we barely had 3 legendary pieces. The rest was just unique and mythics, and that's it. And with the changes they made to tempers last season and especially this season, now we're back to wearing 4 legendary weapons. Now we at least 3 of them. Now we're back to using regular amulets. Now we're back to using, armor pieces are I guess another issue because those ones have big multis. But I feel like tempers are a good solution to that wall. I want to wear a unique because they added one, but unless it's build defining in the end game, it's gonna be better to actually take a legendary which is perfectly optimized for my build.
It's quite interesting actually to hear. Yeah, I guess maybe my closing thought on this topic would be that I don't really like that we have so many defensive slots that just shadowed by offensive uniques. Like we started slowly with like Tibbot's Will, and then okay, Shaco existed, but no one had one. And then season 2 came around, and suddenly everyone had a Shaco that really wanted to grind one. And now that gave you like +4 ranks and all this other crazy stuff. And then okay, now we have like offensive chess pieces, like the Shroud of False Hope, False Death, and stuff like that, right? And suddenly like all the left side of the inventory of the equipment tab is just like more multipliers, right? And this like kind of brings up back to like the power creep, and like it's very easy to survive. You don't actually need those defensive pieces, so people just slot in all the offense, and then suddenly your character is just like 2 or 3 more or 5 times more powerful than it should be, because you don't care about defenses at all. And I feel like this balance is just not really good. And even if you talk about you consider it as a barb, okay, that it could be unique or it could be legendary, but the legendary is only going to be used if it also gives you damage through like the utility temper or whatever, I suppose, or like maybe an aspect that is like utility, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, it's kind of the same problem, I feel, that kind of keeps coming back here.
I use Air Perdition on a damage over time build that isn't a core skill. So like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like what are we doing at this point? It's a helmet that says 60% damage multiplier and movement speed, and that's kind of good enough to run on every single build. Yeah, we don't have to beat a dead horse, but yeah, no, I feel you. The left side needs to be like, it can't all just like concussive strikes and exploiters, and then you have your gloves, which are actually just weapons, and you have Shroud of Dark, False God Death, and then Perdition. And it's like that's every build guide I've made. Why? Because it's optimal, and that's kind of rough.
Maybe you're just being too uncreative.
You're right. I could also put in Fists of Fate, because that is technically on average a 50% multi, and apparently personally responsible for getting rid of CC options on gear. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I'm sure that Ava has something to say about Fist of Fate.
Oh no. How long do we have?
No, please.
Well, I mean, we are actually at like 80 minutes actually 100 minutes at this point, so we're a little bit over the original time that I had scheduled. I guess we can slowly close it out as well. But if you have any final words on this topic.
No, I mean, Fist of Fate can go burn in hell where it belongs. I'm so tired of having to explain random stagger mechanics for absolutely no goddamn reason because of those dumb gloves.
I think Blizzard did mention that they have it in their sites, so I guess we'll see.
I would hope so. I don't know how many dissertations I need, for this to be addressed at some point. No, but honestly, like I feel like the unique problem, having that overall, is sad at this point. Like we have so many good uniques that could be fun, but now we have too many to the point where your entire inventory is just uniques. And how unique are they if everything is unique? So I don't know. I would sort of like it to be a cap, like some of you have said earlier as well, where you can only use certain uniques and then have to solve stuff some other way. It would feel really bad when it would be implemented, but it might make the game feel a little bit more enjoyable overall.
Well, that's actually kind of an interesting thought, right? Like it's something that we didn't really talk about much about this time, but I talked about this in another podcast where I said, okay, why not just have a cap of 1 mythic per character? At least that, like I guess you can like leave the other stuff as it is or so, but 1 mythic, you have to really make the choice. Okay, like do you want the Perdition Helm for the big damage, or do you want the Shaco for the big cooldown, or do you want the Shroud for all the little stuff that you get, or something like that, right? Do you want to equip material and be invincible? That's fine, you give up something. You can only have that one thing. So I think it would be way more interesting if it just had the limitation of 1 mythic. And if you look at, for example, PoE 2, that actually has introduced a artificial limitation to support skill gems, where you cannot have 2 of the same support skills across your different skills. So I guess for people that don't know PoE, but basically, there's like various damage multipliers or special effects you can add to your skills. And people were thinking like, hey, they are limiting what we can put in our skills. And that is not going to be cool. But I gotta say, after playing it, like it did actually do the trick. It did make it a lot more interesting to make those choices, because I have to think about where do I put what. And I guess you would do that to a much smaller degree in D4, but I think the idea behind it would be kind of the same. It's like you have this one choice to make. It's like this tough choice. At least this one thing, right? And then you kind of build around it. And sometimes limitations can actually be, just a lot more exciting, I think. And this would be one of those cases. I'm not sure what's your thoughts on this, but that's just what I learned, especially now after playing PoE2 and having kind of seen a similar limitation in action. I think it worked out really well.
Me being a big grinder of PoE2 for entire 40 hours compared to, everyone else that is playing this game, I honestly felt like the system of PoE2 where you were solving stuff like how can I get the most damage out of these stats, right? Not like, oh, I need this unique effect to make my build go burr. I at like the early stages of the game anyway. It felt kind of refreshing, and having some other system that gave you power and customization to your skills that wasn't directly attached to your gear. It felt pretty nice, but I understand that PoE probably has the same problem that, oh, you need all these uniques to do damage, but I don't know. I do feel like there is a lot of issues with the D4 gearing that we will not solve unless something happens with uniques or mythics.
There's always the next expansion, I guess.
Hey.
And I guess speaking of next expansion, or at least the future in general, so let's move on from this topic here. And I would like to just like briefly go through some questions here that I still have. Just kind of like, give us your thoughts in a brief manner. For example, what is your hopes and wish list maybe for like season 8 or maybe for the next expansion? Something big you want to see addressed now that maybe Blizzard has a bit of time to think about it and like see how like everything settles in. Expansion is already out now for a little while, so the dust is settling. So
the biggest thing that's missing right now, I think, for the game, not for me personally, what I need is an auction house, but the thing that is missing in the game is quite literally just a who's at what Paragon level and what pit tier have they cleared leaderboard. At first I didn't quite realize why everybody felt like they need to have a leaderboard so bad, and I guess it was just because I personally never really cared about the leaderboard in D2, like until it was very important to us, but that was just heinously checking it to make sure that Teo was still, first to 99. But even just being able to, even if I have to go to the Blizzard website or like go into the BattleNet launcher and just like look up who is currently the highest Paragon level on a character and what is their build, is like, I've realized just a fundamental experience to playing an ARPG that just needs to exist. Even if it's not awesome, even if it's not like hyper customizable and all that, just let me see them. And I go, ooh, I'm 4,052. And at the end of today, I became 4,050th. I have accomplished something. Yeah. Just like, oh, and just very quickly, no, I don't mean a real money auction house. God, please, words mean things. No, but no, just to up an in-game market to be able to like trade your gear for gold in-game, as opposed to us having to go to a third-party website to do it, because that just kind of sucks.
Yeah. In my case, I think I have like only about like 3 wishes. I guess that's quite a bit, but like the first one will be, I want more of those like roguelite but difficult content, like when Holds first came, where we were like expecting also like Holds T5, T6, right at the beginning, I believe, and they ended up like stopping at like tier 4 Holds. Tier 4 Holds were like hard for Barb at the beginning, and I appreciated like the way just the entire concept of the content was. Like I kind of liked it. The second thing I kind of want is, I don't want another 2 or 3 season without season team. I feel like getting back to like that season 1, season 2, season 3, where you get like those borrowed powers that we're getting also like for season 7 now, feels like super good because like it creates new builds, it pushes builds, multiple builds in the right direction, I feel. So to me, this is like very important. Also, kind of like you're kind of happy to like get those kind of borrowed powers compared to Season of Loot Reborn, right? I mean, maybe that's just me, but I like having those kind of temporary powers. And I guess the remaining one is please give me some kind of like vertical way, like vertical progression to juice up content. Just like give me Altar of Rights in D4. Will be great. I'd love it. Yeah, like this is on my, I guess, 2025, like
Okay.
2025, like yeah, checklist.
I mean, I must echo the sentiment of the roguelite sort of stuff as well. Give me Risk of Rain in Diablo.
Yeah.
Make me go super silly and have fun in that way. No, but like I have one wish and one wish only because I'm gonna keep this like giving it all of my power to make sure that this happens. Please, for the love of God, tooltip clarity and make sure that stuff doesn't scale off of bugged tooltips anymore. It is a nightmare for class balancing. It's a nightmare for stuff that gets introduced. We're gonna have multiple seasons of precision being the best key passive for rogue because we decided that trick attacks and every other crit damage scaler scales off of that. So please make me not have to utter the words, well, that is a false tooltip. You have to think about it this way. I don't wanna utter those words anymore.
Do you have any hope for that though?
Nope, absolutely none. But it is a wish list, and I hope. But yeah. No.
Yeah, you said wish list. You said most important thing to us, Woody. All right.
I mean, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah,
I got my training dummy.
You can
Don't
hope
worry, so
and
you
cope.
got a
Yeah.
training dummy. Yeah. They do need to put like, I don't know, like a little like YouTube embed so that you could be watching something on the side wall down in the Kurast while you're hitting the dummy.
You know, making sure I can change the skins. If they would add training dummy skins to the shop, I would go so fast and just swipe like nobody's business. But no. Oh, actually, DPS meter for training dummy area. Nowhere else in the game I don't need it, but in the training dummy area, for ethical players.
And Occultist as well.
Oh yeah, and there's so many things I want actually. Just give me a town inside of the training dummy area, and I'll be happy.
Give me a town inside of our den. Hey, real quick, I want to go back. Why do I have to go back to the mercenary den to swap out my mercenaries when Karagar is the only place with a pit obelisk in it, and also there's no training dummy there? Let swap out my mercenaries on the fly, please. I hate going back there.
Oh,
Just
wait a
swap
minute.
them and then
Is
leave.
the mercenary part of the armory system?
I don't know.
The mercenary is not, and neither are your seasonal powers. Yeah,
I have the solution to this. Because we need, we want all the vendors in the training dummy area. We want to change mercenaries. We'll just move the training dummy to the den. That will solve everything.
And then we put them both in the pit.
Yes.
Okay, guys, enough. All right, that was quite interesting to hear, though. Very good. Now one last question I have, and then we can maybe dive into a few chat questions. So if you guys want to prepare something, just we can do some rapid fire after this. So I have one last question for you guys. What's the bet for Season 7 mid-season patch and events? If you already have any kind of
festival. Like Chinese Lunar Festival in Diablo.
Okay, that sounds kind of likely, I guess. When is that again? Yeah, it's in some weeks, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Meme answer is the Festival of Barbarian Tears when Barbarian interactions suddenly gets fixed mid-season.
Yeah. I mean, they tried that with Bash in Season 4, right? And they just said, okay, no, we just fixed the tooltip. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah, I remember that, man. Oh, God.
The outrage of Bash Barbs, yeah.
We removed the earthquake.
Tech rune has been deleted.
I mean, that will Yes, that will actually nerf the build by like 10x.
Fixed.
I would actually really like to see them implement like World of Warcraft level holiday events where it's kind of like a multi-week thing. And if you don't get everything this year, you can do it again next year. I think like that was probably one of my favorite things to try to grind out in WoW when I was, you know, done with my build or I wasn't doing a raid or something. So seeing that level of event in the game, I think would help just an astronomical amount of like actually getting people to want to come back and play, because I don't think I can do another go kill like 1,000 goblins to get loot I don't necessarily care about so much.
We need the Santa hats from World of Warcraft on bosses in Diablo. That's what we
Also,
need.
yes, little reindeer, you know, Rudolph noses, you know, the whole 9 yards. Give Duriel a menorah. Like, let's really go wild.
Okay, sounds good. So there's a few questions in the chat, guys. If you have anything more, then shoot it. But one is, what about the aspirational bird from the season theme? What do you think? Like, is that it's gonna be enough for you? Is that gonna be actually like a, you know, interesting solution?
I'm really excited for the bird to quite literally be better at picking up stuff because it will travel faster than my cat.
In Diablo 3, that happened, by the way. The flying pets are better at picking up stuff.
So yeah, so I'm really stoked because sometimes my cat doesn't pick up everything for me, you know, and that always kind of pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I honestly, I think having like a new pet for people to go after rather than like a book you put on your horse and it looks weird, I think is so much better. So like, yeah, roll out a pet every time, and I think that's like good enough.
Wings, dude. Where are the aspirational wings?
Fucking wings. Thank you, Ava.
Oh yeah, you're right, wings.
Like pets are nice. I think it's okay, right? But like wings, everyone loves the wings.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Yeah, I think there's like way too little of that, yeah, and like earnable stuff in the game, right? If you're talking about aspirational stuff, like a challenging thing. But yeah, I also feel like this new season journey thing, I was actually hoping for that. Like half a decade ago, more than half a decade ago, I already gave this feedback to Blizzard. I was like, guys, can't you just like add, I don't know, like 3 more steps to the season journey that kind of like ramp up exponentially with some actually difficult stuff? You know, you don't even have to give us a reward, you know, just do something there. And then maybe, you know, if you do the last step, you get like, you know, 500 rift keys to do a push at the end or whatever, right? You can do some in-game reward that is kind of like a chase there. But it's like, yeah, we're getting this now, and looking at like the season journey thing, it just seems like an absolute joke. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry for all the Bilb lovers.
Anyway, I got scolded by my chat for not reading the nickname, so that question earlier was from Crucible, by the way. And we have another one from Wonka's Wonders. If you wanted to create any one brand new endgame mechanic, what would it be? So real quick, can you come up with something?
Sacrifice. It's called sacrifice. You have to take enough items with enough different aspects, and it summons a malignant version of a boss, and that boss will drop a higher chance of those items being better. So you have to feed it good gear to have a chance at getting better gear. I don't know. You do it in one of the boss crucible areas. There you go. Sacrifice. Coming to Diablo 4.
Cool idea.
I'll stay with my idea of just like getting like Altar of Rights from Diablo 3 into Diablo 4.
Okay.
Dungeon locked. Sorry, dungeons that locks your character's gear to something specific that isn't your normal loadout. Kind of like the class sets or whatever that you had before, where you just ran through dungeons with a specific set. You could kind of offset the whole, this one build is the go-to thing, and just play with like, well, now you have to clear pit 20 with this random set of not good items at all, but you have to do it for this random pet. That could be fun.
Okay. Yeah, when I have to answer this question, I would really like to see some kind of like roguelike mode. Well, I did say we don't talk about Diablo Immortal, but it does have a system in the game that is actually, it sounds very exciting. I've never played it, but it sounds very exciting. I heard good things about it, which is basically you start a fresh round with like nothing, and you kind of build your build on the go. And then, you know, you go like through like, let's say like, you know, 50 levels or something, a little bit like Hades or something, you know. I'd like to see some type of like side end game content added that goes in that direction. So that'll be pretty badass. I feel as
Like
something
you
like
clear a level and you get a new
yeah,
item.
you get like
and
a
you can
choice
choose
of
out
like
of free.
exactly you get like a choice of an upgrade, but maybe it has a downside as well, and then that carries forward for the rest of the run, until like the final boss, and like you do it or you don't, like with a high chance of actually failing the run as well. And yeah, it's something like that could be really cool, and something where it's like I log in and I'm like, I don't want to grind anything else. I'm just going to spend like 3 hours in this thing now, so.
Yeah.
Something like that could be interesting, but of course it's like a pretty large system. But maybe an expansion feature or so.
The same thing. Like I was gonna say the same shit that was mentioned in chat now. Like battle royale from our PvP events. Like that battle royale thing was actually super fun to do.
Oh yeah,
Something
level
like that is
1,
actually supported by the game.
100 people drop into Fractured Peaks, and let's go. And the zone gets smaller and smaller. There's a butcher running around. Oh man, it could be hilarious. You
A
kill
poison
someone.
imbued butcher. Yeah.
Yeah, you kill someone, it drops all the items, you pick them up, Oh, beautiful, man. That could be so cool.
Listen.
Such cool things.
As long as I don't have to fight Panda with his stun familiar, I'm good. Like, I'm fine. But if I have to fight Panda with stun familiar one more time in PvP, I am gonna lose my mind.
Yep. Okay, is there any other questions? What are the thoughts on 9 Dungeon being more like WoW Mythic Plus, says Shadow Knight? Do you feel that way?
Like the raid is like a low-key version of kind of almost that a little bit more so, just like a content type where you go through and you fight the bosses that are a part of it, and like it I'm down for all content to exist in the game. This was something I said, I don't know, maybe like close to launch. I was like, make this game Fortnite. Put everything in. Give me a Lego builder. Give me every single type of content in this game. There's no reason not to. It's all opt-in. But yeah, Mythic Dungeons, put those in here. You want your battle royale? Sure, as long as you give me the most recent default Fortnite dance too. No, but seriously, I think there's no wrong answer to add new content to the game.
Yeah.
Ever.
For like Nightmare Dungeon, I would like the option to like juice up the affixes on it, for example, for like more difficulty and stuff like those. This will be good as well.
I guess juicing in general is like a big topic, I guess, that we keep coming back to. Yeah. All right. Did I miss any other questions, guys? Just for the chat, real quick. If there's anything, I'll just write it again. Worst case, if I didn't see anything, otherwise.
I don't know, like kill Lilith 100 times and give you the option to turn every single monster inside the Nightmare Dungeon into butchers. And you will have like to fight through the entire wave of butchers to get to the boss, which is like a big butcher.
And every time he hooks, he shoots out more butchers.
Yep.
It would be nice if it was the complete opposite. The boss is just a treasure goblin. Just sitting like, hey.
Yeah, it's like the old butcher, except when
and instead of gold piles as he runs, he drops more butchers.
Yep.
Oh man, Butchmare Dungeons, yes. Okay.
I've never heard you say butcher before, and I have to tell you that is my favorite way of pronouncing the word ever. Literally never changed that. That is perfect. He is the butcher, and we need butcher dungeons, and I want to get butched by the butcher. That is so good.
All right. Okay. Well, I think we kind of wrap it up here. Yeah, I don't see any other questions here that will be like, there's one last thing here. Which builds you guys see being able to do 150 based on the current info? Says Monkey Toy. I think we covered that though pretty much. So there's like Necro with Blood Wave, we have Earthquake. I think Cataclysm might get there. So 3 classes might do it. But we'll see. Yeah, end of that. I guess we can wrap it up, guys. We had like just barely over 2 hours at this point, so we went a bit longer than expected, but we had a really good discussion, I think, so that was very fun. Hope that chat enjoys it, and also like the people on YouTube. Wish everyone a wonderful season 7. So personally, I will be blasting at least for a while. I guess everyone here will, and well, it's been a while actually after like all this PoE2 grind. So if you guys have anything else that you want to share, your final thoughts, and also like maybe like, a few words again about yourself, and maybe your content or something, and then we're gonna say goodbye here.
Reverse order, Max starts.
Okay,
I'll go
Mac
ahead and
beats
start.
Antoneva.
Hi, Macro Bio Boy. You either know me or you don't know me at this point. I also will be streaming on Twitch and YouTube for the entire season blast. I'm going to be playing on Necro. Going to start off on Bloodwave. Obviously going to do Blood Spear as well. I end up playing everything though. I'm really excited for Blight as well because we got some massive buffs there too. So if that's what you're interested in, come hang out. I'll probably spend at least half of the time with an Excel sheet open in the training room. Maybe Ava will come join me. We can have a little duo testing session. But yeah,
For sure.
thanks for having me as always. This is always great. And God, I'm so not ready. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that I have the energy to go stream for 20 plus hours tomorrow, but we're gonna try.
Alright. Good luck. I still have to finish my guides too.
Oh yeah, I am immediately gonna go back to writing a guide. Like I'm gonna eat lunch and go back to writing a guide right now. So like, shout outs to work-life balance.
Okay, beat.
Hey, I'm Beat Dropper. I'm not a content creator. You might find some of my videos because I do love to push the pit a lot during the first weeks before, well, other kind of players get their hands on super overpowered items and beat me to it. If you have any questions about Barbarian, please just ping me on Maxroll. I love to do flowchart to explain stuff. So if you need those as well, just go. I'll be there.
All right. Well, this has been super fun. I'm Ava. I'm probably gonna be stuck in the training dummy area for about 4 weeks, doing nothing but interaction testing. If you guys enjoy that at all, I am not gonna stream it because I'm sorry. It's gonna be a drag. But if you do want to hang out and chat and tell me to, hey, Ava, test this stuff, you can find me in Woody's Discord. You can find me on Maxwell Discord. Just ping me. I'm more than happy to answer questions regarding theory crafting. If you find anything in the resource section that is out of date, I'm sorry. Just ping me. I'm gonna be doing all of that stuff in this season.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, and I am OG Boov, so you can see that there. No, but yeah, that was the podcast, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it.